Talking always seems to be the focal point of any media. Even when you're reading something, you have that little goblin voice in your head spelling out all the words for you. Right? It makes sense, as dialogue drives stories. It's what allows us as consumers to take in a plot, which can sometimes become complex and overwhelming. Without it, most of the great narratives we come to love and know wouldn't exist. But when it comes to visual media, in this case video games, people, or like eldritch beasts, talking are only 50% of the equation. Visual storytelling is a great method of demonstrating feeling, and is what elevates a scene from good to great. You can watch Kratos scream out his anguish and rage, which is still entertaining, but how many times does he have to yell at Zeus until you think,
Zeus! Zeus! Put her down, Zeus! Zeus!
Okay, I think I get it. Take a look at God of War 2018. It always seems like there's so much more Kratos wants to say to his son, but he can never really let it out. Now, how could I know this? Kratos never tells Atreus, "Boy, I have a hard time letting out my emotions, and I'm scared to tell you what kind of person I used to be." Boom! Visuals. It's noticeable in the way Kratos acts, how he can never really fully embrace his son. And while parts of it definitely consist of dialogue, it's evident that through the skilled use of animation and acting, that there's so much more said without it. Visuals can accompany a story and bolster it up. Throw in some metaphors, symbolism, and now you're really cooking. However, what if I pulled a sneaky move here and took out that first 50%? What's left? Some masterclass visuals. Creativity often thrives in constraints, so eliminate one of the easiest ways to convey a story, and you get some unique ways to make up for it. The main method happens to be a little something I brought up earlier. Gonna be singing this one a lot. And with all that in mind, many games that use strictly visuals to tell a story aren't the longest. Ripping out all the dialogue from Persona 5 would more than likely cut it to less a quarter of its original size. So, let's take a look at one of the first games I wanted to cover, and one I've already talked about a little bit. Journey tells a story via the actual journey you take through these hollowed grounds of a desert temple crammed inside of a big mountain. It's a tale as old as time, one of hate begetting hate and greed consuming a prosperous civilization. While the details are explained through encounters with these elder spirits, it's not fully realized until it's witnessed firsthand. The ominous setting of what's to come is set with that initial start, surrounded by hundreds of graves. As you continue to progress, more of what kind of place the desert used to be pieces itself together, until you reach the point that wiped it out. As the purpose of the journey is steadily revealed, so is the significance of the player. The build-up to the finale is perfect, leading to a climactic last stand against the forces that tore down the ancestors and nature itself. Just before collapsing to death, you're granted one final push of strength and it's so good. ABZU is a lot like Journey, full of grandeur moments, a stunning soundtrack, a good message story. But if you haven't noticed, there's a lot more water. You serve as one of the last remnants of an ancient Atlantis civilization that's become corrupted with... Well, this one has big fish and lobster. The similarities actually stop at that beginning tidbit, as your main goal in ABZU is to bring back life to a desolate ocean. The water-filled utopia is slowly being eaten alive by foreign contraptions created for a race of people who couldn't even sustain themselves. Over the course of the game, the beauties and intricacies of sea life is put on the show, constantly giving reason to fight off the ever-present force of control that's plagued life below the surface. Also, you get to make a cool shark friend, so that kind of makes it a 10 out of 10 story for me. In comparison to the previous two games, Inside is a little bit harder to understand. With no voice to explain the plot, the stories of these types of games tend to be pretty straightforward. The immersive experience that encapsulates them is what makes them so incredible to play. Inside is similar in that regard, however, nothing is straightforward whatsoever. Initially when I started playing it, I figured the entire game was a commentary on corporate dystopia, using mindless slaves to reach this distant end goal with no questions of morals. But as you continue to push deeper into the spiraling lab, it appears to be more and more sinister. The boy you play as is constantly hunted, abused, and forced into terrible conditions. Although despite that, it's never fully explained why that is. The ending might shine some light onto that, but at the same time, it's really hard to say. Inside's story is made for theory crafting and analysis, making the player want to dig deeper after traveling through this bizarre and unhinged adventure. It pokes and prods in different directions, which at the same time makes it all the more interesting. And for that, I'd say it's incredibly unique. Of course, you could chalk it up to art house nonsense for the sake of sticking out, but where's the fun in that? With no spoken sentences, no words uttered, no documents depicting lore, just subtle hints in the game's main content. It's as if you're plunged down this rabbit hole of unknown secrets. Inside is simply giving you a slight peek into what its world is about. What's inside? Rime envelops itself in this magical, mystical world filled with all manners of creatures. At the same time, this is incredibly sad. Like, the ending kind of fucked me up. You play as this kid who gets washed up on a deserted island that's also a desert temple. And a forest temple. And a water temple. And a rain temple. Over time, these locations are steadily revealed to be a representation of the 5 stages of grief. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. I don't think this game could have been done half as well with dialogue, as so much of it is given to the player through visuals alone. Piecing together what initially seems like this silly adventure with a boy and his fox companion turns into a brutal, yet mesmerizing story. The glyphs and slight hints towards the reality of the situation the boy is in continue to stack up on top of each other, all for it to fall down in the end. But through the horrid darkness of truth, a glimmer of light stays, waiting to be reached out to. Each and every story here comes from games without a lick of dialogue. You get some grunts or gasps, or eerie silence, but otherwise there's no other vocal sounds to come from these characters. While there are some undeniable benefits from listening to guys talk for several hours out of an entire chunk of a game, the same could be said about ones with none at all. No matter what, there's always that sense of serenity and silence, followed by magical moments, carefully planning your next move, or discovering a shocking turn. These types of games and their stories aren't looking to pile you on with tons of information. Rather, they're looking to take you in to experience everything they have to offer, to immerse you. How much you want to see is really up to you.